that is some resilience you showed there.
This guy just grabbed me, and his face was like right in my face. And there's this, it was fierce. And he screamed at me and said, "Get the hell out of my race and give me those numbers." I mean, I just squeaked and tried to jump away from me. He grabbed me by the shirt and was pulling me back. He exploded in rage and he said, "No dame ever ran no marathon." I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. I thought maybe I had screwed up. The press were all over me and very aggressive. "What are you trying to prove?" They really kept hammering me and saying, "When are you going to quit?" And it's up to women like me to show him, be able to take the blow and come back, or diffuse the blow somehow.
On today's episode of The Resilience Project, I chat with the amazing Kathrine Switzer, a pioneer who's left an indelible mark on both equality and sport. Kathrine made history and headlines worldwide as the first woman to officially run the Boston Marathon at a time when women were not permitted to compete at the same level as men, nor run long distances. She paved the way for women in sport, and her resilience isn't just about breaking records, but it's about creating deep connections and forgiveness. Despite attempts to physically and forcibly remove her from the race by the race director, Kathrine later forged a profound friendship with him, demonstrating the power of forgiveness and reconciliation. Join us as we unravel Kathrine's incredible journey of overcoming doubters, navigating adversity, and advocating for gender equality in sports. Her story not just inspires athletes, but offers valuable lessons for anyone who doesn't want to settle for the norm on how to overcome challenges with courage and grace. Welcome to this episode of The Resilience Project, chatting with Kathrine Switzer.
Well, Kathrine, it's a pleasure to have you on the Resilience Project podcast. You are such a pioneer and a world changer, and I know our audience is going to get so much value from you. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I was hoping you could take us back to December 1966. You're a 19-year-old studying journalism at university. And from what I understand, you were doing a 6-mile run through a pretty wild snowstorm with your running coach, a guy called Arnie Briggs. And then an argument broke out between you. So what happened next?
That's a great story, and it's changed my life. My coach would regale me with stories of running the Boston Marathon, which was the greatest day in his life. And he had run 15 of them every night in practice to get me through Syracuse training weather. And Syracuse is the worst climate in the United States. It was a horrible snowstorm that night. And he started in on another Boston Marathon story. And I said, "Well, let's quit talking about the Boston Marathon and run the darn thing." And he said, "A woman can't run the Boston Marathon." And I said, "What? You're telling me every night I'm great." And he said, "You are, but you know, a woman can't run it. It's physiologically difficult and if not impossible for a woman to run the marathon." And I said, "I read that a woman ran the marathon last year." And in fact, that was true. Roberta Gibb had run the Boston Marathon unofficially, slipped out of the bushes and ran the race in 1966. He exploded in rage and he said, "No dame ever ran no marathon." And I said, "Arnie, I'm not going to want to run with you if you don't believe a woman can do it." He said, "I'll tell you what, if any woman could, you could, but even you would have to prove it to me. In fact, if you would show me in practice that you could do the distance, I'd be the first person to take you to Boston." Well, that's all I needed was a challenge. And I loved going long. I wasn't good at speed. The guys on the cross country team, I couldn't keep up with them. But when they came out and ran with us on the roads, when we got going long, they didn't want to come with us anymore. But that's another story. Anyway, we started adding miles and adding miles. And the day came when to run 26.2 miles. And I was so excited. And when we were finishing our course, Arnie said, "I don't believe it. You're going to do this. And you look great." I said, "I feel great. In fact, I think it's too short." And he said, "What?" I said, "I don't think we measured this right. Let's do another 5 miles." And he said, "You can do another 5 miles?" And I said, "Sure, can't you?" And he goes, Anyway, we went out, do this other 5 miles. And the last mile, he was gone, absolutely gone. legs rubber, eyes, all over the place. And I put my arm through it, says, come on, we can do it. And when we finished 31 miles, and I threw my arms around, I said, we did it, we're going to Boston. And he passed out. But when he came to, he said, women have hidden potential in endurance and stamina. And look at sports now. Wow. It's changed the face of sports. Women are winning everything. Give us 50, 100, 200 miles, give us a Grand Traverse, run the Pennines, we're there.
So Arnie was the mailman, I understand, at university, but because he was a good runner, he was also involved with the track team.
He was a surreptitious runner all the time. And he was still the upstate New York champion in marathon. And as he aged, he was falling off his peak, of course. But what he would do is he would go through his rounds as a postman, jog to the field house, change into his running gear, go out and run with the men's cross country team, go back, take a shower, put his uniform on, and go back and clock out of the post office. So now he was doing this on the U.S. government's dime. So now I can tell his story because he passed away, of course. Yeah. But anyway, but he then, as he got older, he did something that's very, very important. He started volunteering, and he helped out with the team, and he held the clipboard and the whistle and helped the guys train. Mm-hmm. And that's what he did. And when he saw me, he took me under his wing, and it felt sorry for me because I was so slow, and began jogging with me. So there you go.
So fast forward then, it was 3 weeks before the Boston Marathon. You did that run with Arnie where you did the 31 miles to prove you could do it. And then was it at that point you had to apply for the marathon?
We did apply very late, but Arnie said, we got to get these entry forms in. You've got to register. And I said, but that other woman didn't register. And he said, but that's wrong. He said, you're a card-carrying member of the Athletic Federation. This is very strict rules. Plus, you've got to pay your $2 entry fee. We laugh about that now. And it's very strict. So put in your AAU number, get your medical certificate. We got everything done. But I signed my name, KV Switzer. And I wasn't doing that to defraud the guys. It's because I was studying journalism. My dad had misspelled my name on my birth certificate. So my name by the typesetters was always changed to correct it, and it was wrong. So I got really tired of that. I was also in love with J.D. Salinger, and KV Switzer was a cool name for a sports writer. So that's how I signed my name.
Because of course,
and when the entry went in, they obviously thought it was from a man, not a woman.
I understand. So there was nothing disingenuous about it.
No, there wasn't. And in fact, I said to Arnie as I signed it and pushed the entry across to him to mail in, I said, Arnie, I said, if I wear a number in Boston, people are going to notice me. And he said, because I didn't want to make a fuss. I just wanted to go run. And he said, I know. And I'm proud of you. Isn't that amazing? I mean, he's a 50-year-old guy and this is a 19-year-old girl. I mean, that's a big deal to put yourself on the line like that. Amazing.
Yeah. One of the things I was actually going to ask you about, Arnie, was how it felt to have someone believe in you the way he did.
Well, of course, I took a lot for granted. I just thought, oh, well, he's slow and he's older now. And he needs he's happy to have a companion to run with. And he loved running the roads. The boys didn't love running on the roads. So we were out there for miles and miles, and we talked and talked and talked about everything. Sometimes you just kind of need a buddy. And he loved having a running buddy, and I'd never had a buddy before either. So it was fun for me. We argued all the time, but it was a really terrific. He wasn't a father figure. He wasn't a brother figure or a boyfriend figure. He was a friend. He was a buddy. It had nothing to do with gender. It was amazing.
If we get to the marathon itself, then can you tell us a bit about, getting there and preparing, and did you really have any idea of what was to come?
No, I had no idea what was to come, except that I was worried that by wearing this number, that when they were checking us into the chute to go into the starting area, that official would say, "Hey, little girl, I'm sorry. No, sorry," something like that. And I didn't want to fuss, and I didn't want to be disappointed. But as it turns out, the weather was so horrible. It was sleeting, snowing, rain, horrible wind, and the race was chaos, in terms of getting it organized, because people were freezing and huddling. We wore everything we brought. Everybody did. everything from garbage bags to, windbreakers to stocking caps to the hotel towel around your neck, and it was because we were so cold. And when we went into the check-in area, they were moving us along like this, and they just said, pull up your shirts, show us your bibs. So I pulled up my shirt and they pushed me in. And Arnie said, see, no problem. and in there, all the guys knew I was a girl. And they were, you know what? They were wonderful. They were saying, I wish my wife would run, I wish my girlfriend would run. Would you give me some tips? She'd feel so great about herself if she ran. They were really kind. Hey, we're with you all the way, that kind of stuff. I felt really great.
Amazing. So you had number 261, which we can also see on your shirt right now.
Yeah, wait, I got a copy of it here. Let me show you. There we go.
Hey,
like that.
That's cool.
Now there's a reason this is torn here, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Well, I think the race started at midday.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an early start. But what happened next?
What happened next is the gun went off, and then there's a rush of down the street, and there's this huge sense of relief by everybody, whether you're elite or you're last. It's like, oh my God, finally, all the training. Now we're going to do it. To hell with the weather. You're out here, just you and the elements and everybody else, and it's almost like going to Mecca, I guess, because you're all pilgrims on the same journey, trying to do the best you can to cover this unthinkable distance, really. And there was kind of the sense of joy. Yay, we're off and running. Well, it's going to hurt later, but right then you're going. And so there was this sort of sense of euphoria and laughter and people passing each other and saying, go for it, we're with you, all that kind of stuff. Then along the side of us came a press truck. And I thought, that's really weird that the press truck starts behind the runners, but Boston didn't used to be very organized. Yeah. Anyway, the truck came by us, and on the back were photographers taking pictures. And we were waving to our moms on the nightly news. We were waving to the people on the press truck, the guys on the press truck, because they were taking our pictures. And when they saw me, hair flying, I was in a heavy sweatsuit. So, I mean, it wasn't in my cute shorts and top or anything, a heavy sweatsuit, not a hood, but they could see the 261, and they looked me up and they said, girl, what are you doing here? They were a little aggressive, like, what are you trying to prove? And, what? Just trying to run. Anyway, they took their pictures, but all of a sudden behind me, I heard a bus kind of do that sound when it stops. And then I heard leather shoes coming quickly. As a runner, you hear the dog often before you see the dog. And I turned quickly like this, and this guy just grabbed me. And his face was like right in my face. And it was fierce. And he screamed at me and said, get the hell out of my race and give me those numbers. And started grabbing at my numbers. I didn't know who the hell he was, And I said, I just squeaked and tried to jump away from me. He grabbed me by the shirt and was pulling me back. And Arnie started batting at him, saying, leave her alone, she's okay, I've trained her. And he just smacked my coach. And then my big burly boyfriend, ex-All-American football player, came running full tilt, and it was amazing. Just went through the crowd and sliced through and took him out completely. And he went flying. I was like this. And my coach was scared too. We said, run like hell. And down the street we went. Look, I tell you this story. He was just trying to rip my bibs off, Yeah. Give me those bibs and get out of my race. It's hilarious in the retelling, because of the action and my boyfriend saving me. But it was a terrible, terrible thing for me. I was running my dream race. I was there. I had trained so hard. And I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. I thought maybe I had screwed up the race in some way. Like somebody walks across the finish line beam and ruins everybody's race or something. I didn't know what was going on. And the press were all over me and very aggressive. What are you trying to prove? Are you a suffragette? Are you a crusader? I was just sort of blindsided by all of this. I said, I'm just trying to run. And they really kept hammering me and saying, when are you going to quit? When are you going to quit? And Arnie looked at me like, do you want to quit? And I looked at Arnie and I said, I am finishing this race on my hands and my knees if I have to. Now, where this 20-year-old kid got that, maybe it was all the miles we had done in the snow, or maybe it was the persistence I had as a kid or whatever. And I said, no matter what, I'm finishing. I said, you guys, I said to the presser, you guys might as well go up the head at the start of the race because I'm not quitting, no matter what. Well, they begrudgingly drove on up to the start of the race. And then Arnie turned to me and he said, are you serious about it? I said, I'm very serious about this, Arnie. And I said, and really, you know what? If we fall apart, you know, I got to go on now and I got to finish. When you go through a marathon, you kind of go through a life. And as the miles went on, you know, I'd murdered the race official quite a few ways. A person could be murdered. And then a funny thing happens. You get to about 30 Ks, you know, maybe 32, and all that anger disappears because you can't hold anger anymore. You can't hold anything really much anymore. You're on fumes. And I said, you know what? It's not his fault. You know, he's just a product of his time. You know, he's a tough guy. He thinks somebody's screwing up his race. And he doesn't take me seriously. That's what he thinks about women. He doesn't believe women can do this. And it's up to women like me to show him that things are changing. And you know, it's not his fault. So I can't be angry at him. And it's his race. And he's having a tough day. Arnie was not forgiving. Arnie wanted to murder him. Then I went on and I got to about, I guess about 22 miles at this point. And then I started thinking, where are the women? And I am ashamed today to tell you that I got angry at women. I said, why don't they get it? Why aren't there other women doing challenging things and believing in themselves and learning how to run and feeling free and empowered like I feel? And then I thought, oh my God, are you still so stupid? They haven't had an opportunity. You know, my dad was the guy who started encouraging me to run when I was 12. You know, he said, run a mile a day and you can make the field hockey team in your school. And I did. And I was so empowered by it that I kept running. Anyway, but I said, oh my God, they've never had the opportunity. And then another thing occurred to me. It was that women were always told that when we get a chance, then we take it like a job, but we can't do it anyway. So we get the chance, but you can't really do it. Well, of course, you know, if people set you up like that, you will fail. And so no wonder they were discouraged. Plus, I have to tell you, the myths around women's sports were so profound. You know, if you do anything arduous, your uterus is going to fall out. That was the big one. Or you're going to turn into a man, or you're going to grow hair on your chest, or somehow you're going to lose your femininity. And for most women, their femininity was really their only power, and or their sexuality. And oh my God, how could I be so stupid? But I've got to figure out a way of giving them that opportunity to change, to believe in themselves. So it was a hell of a race, I'll tell you.
So you were realizing this. You were a 20-year-old girl, basically, who was realizing that you were going to change society.
No, I didn't know I was going to change society. No. First of all, I knew by the time I finished, I said, okay, what are you going to do? His name was Jock Semple, by the way, the official, a fiery Scotsman. And he came from a tough background. Years later, you know, I got to know him and we became very good friends. But we became best of friends. And he came from a very tough background. He had to fight for everything. And so, of course, his first default reaction is going to be combative on things. In terms of convincing Jock Semple, I decided I had to become a better athlete, because when I finished the Boston Marathon, it was 4 hours and 20 minutes. And in 1967, that was considered a jogging time. And you know, although the race always said we welcome anybody who can reasonably finish the race, 4:20 was considered a jogging time. And he himself, Jock, was very, very insulting about it. And the next day, the press called me and said, what are you going to do? And I said, nothing. I mean, he's a man who lost his temper, and you know, we need to make some change. But are you going to sue him? I said, no, of course not. You know, we'll figure out a better way of doing this. He called a press conference and he said, 4 hours and 20 minutes, I could have walked it that fast. So he kept up the aggression.
Mm.
And he kept up the aggression for a number of years, but I kept smiling and taking the high road. And what women did, what women do best, and we got together and decided we need to change the rules.
Yeah.
So we worked very hard at the legislation, took us 5 years, and we got women official in the United States to run marathons officially.
Because at that time, it didn't say women couldn't. It wasn't specific around gender. Is that right?
Oh, there was nothing in the rule book,
Yeah.
because I challenged Arnie on this, and we got out the rule book and there was nothing about gender in the marathon.
Mhm.
But I should have known better.
No, that was how they saw it.
And in fact, for the athletes who are listening here, because this is significant, I was expelled from the Athletic Federation because I had run in a race that was longer than 1.5 miles, and that was the longest distance allowed for women, that I had fraudulently entered the race by using my initials, even though men had, that I had run in a men's only race, and that I had, wait for this, I had run without a chaperone.
Unbelievable.
I know.
Who would imagine it today? So
Yeah.
what about, your boyfriend, Tom, although he was kind of the hero of the moment by getting rid of Jock out the way, he ended up kind of letting himself down somewhat, didn't he?
He did. It was, look, he was a fabulous athlete, okay? And when I told him I was going to run the Boston Marathon, he laughed and he said, well, and I'm going to go run Boston too. And I said, Tom, come on, you weigh 235 pounds here. I mean, you're a great athlete, you're quick, you're a great hammer thrower, football player. And he said, if a girl can run a marathon, I can run a marathon. I said, Tom, it doesn't work that way. You got to train. And he said, if a girl can do it, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So he showed up having not run more than like 3 miles in his entire life. And he was handy, at the beginning, right? History would have been different if he hadn't taken out Jock Semple. We certainly wouldn't have one of the most galvanizing photographs in sports.
Yeah.
Anyway, but then after that, he got angry at me and told me, I hit an official. My picture is in the newspaper because they're taking our pictures. I'm going to be kicked out of the Amateur Athletic Union. I am never going to make the Olympic team because of you. You have ruined my Olympic dream. And I said, Tom, I told you not to come to Boston. Well, it's a good thing I did come to Boston. I said, Tom, you don't get what I'm saying. And he said, well, besides that, you run too slow anyway. And he took off.
Mm.
Well, I mean, it's also embarrassing to have a boyfriend-girlfriend argument in the middle of the Boston Marathon, really. Everybody, because you can't go anywhere. It's like being in a restaurant when a couple has an argument. You know how embarrassing that is. Anyway, I passed him on Heartbreak Hill. I'm going to spoil the story. I passed him on Heartbreak Hill, and he pretended like he wasn't walking. And he said, walk with me. I'll get it back if you walk with me. If you're walking at 13, call a taxi. It's over.
Yeah. I mean, that is some resilience you showed there to overcome not just Jock, the referee, the official, telling you to get out the race and trying to manhandle you out, the press kind of turning on you, and then
my gosh,
having a go at you as well, and yet you still continued.
Well, because I knew I was right, actually. And I knew if I dropped out or I slowed down and walked with my boyfriend, I wasn't being an athlete. I wasn't being true to myself. Or to what needed to be done at that moment. What needed to be done at the moment is for me to do my best, maybe pull it back a little, but finish that race. That was absolutely the most important thing I had to do. Mm-hmm. And I did. Tom finished an hour later, believe it or not. We made up. We got married. It was a very contentious marriage. But it was, but we tried, at least I did. And Roger, my present husband, and my only husband, and my only ever husband, said, you had to marry him. Because I said, why did I marry that bozo? And he said, you had to. And I said, what do you mean you had? He said, it's the end of the Shakespearean drama. And time goes on. But the moment was really significant, not just for the tenacity and the persistence of finishing the race, but what happened afterwards, the legislation, the work, the planning. Did I have a terrific career? Yeah. But boy, did I have to work at it. Every single measured course, Eventually, I created a program for Avon Cosmetics, at the time, the world's largest cosmetics company. I looked at this company, they were a big multinational, and I said, what's going to change women's sports is to create a program that is for women, non-intimidating, welcoming. And how am I going to do that? And I said, I'll write a business proposal and tell a company they can get tons of publicity by doing this amazing events. And I propose that they do events around the world, and that we use the data and statistics from those events to show the International Olympic Committee that women deserve to be in the Olympic Games. Okay. At that time, people thought I was smoking poppy. The longest event in the Olympic Games is 1,500 meters. How do you think they're going to ever put in a marathon? And I said, if we have the critical mass, they have to. Yeah, but we don't have the critical mass. I went from federation to federation, organizing races. And in almost every case, not the UK, not Canada, not New Zealand, and not the USA, but almost every other federation gave me a very hard time, said the women in our country are feminine and they wouldn't want to run. And I said, there's nothing unfeminine about running. And I said, well, we're going to go ahead and put on the race. I'd sure appreciate your support. And they said, well, you go ahead and put on your race and we'll see what happens. Well, women not only showed up, they showed up by their thousands.
Amazing.
Their thousands.
Yeah.
Women showed up without shoes. And I'm not talking like about Adidas or Nike. I'm talking that some of them were so poor, they had no shoes. And what this proves is that if you give anybody a sliver of an opportunity, it can change their lives. Because when you give somebody a medal and a t-shirt and they run 5K or 10K or half marathon, they become somebody. They really do. And for women who often had nothing, they went back, they said, hey, you know what? I can get a better job. I can finish that education. I can be a better mom. The letters we got, oh my gosh, were unbelievable. Country to country, and finally we had the Olympic requirement was 24 countries and 3 continents, and we had 27 countries and 5 continents. And then we got medical evidence to show that women had huge capacity, maybe even more than men, in endurance and stamina. And in an exclusive meeting, the board of directors of the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, they voted the women's marathon into the games in 1981 for the 84 games. I love telling that story right now, especially as we're heading to the Paris Olympics, because it's so exciting to see now that the Paris Olympics are celebrating the fact that women are equal in the Paris Olympics. There is many women competing as men for the first time in history. And this is much more than a sports event. This is a huge social revolution. And the women's marathon was a massive part of it, because the marathon is really long and extremely tough, legendarily tough. And when people around the world saw that first women's Olympic marathon in 1984, it wasn't just the 90,000 people in the stadium in Los Angeles. It was the 2.2 billion people on television watching it in places where women not even allowed to go out of the house or drive a car or get an education. And everybody knows that 26.2 miles or 42.2 kilometers is a long way.
Oh, hello. Sorry to interrupt. Look, it's just a quick favour. If you're enjoying this, which I guess you are if you're still listening, can you make sure you leave a review? That's all. Now, back to the podcast.
What advice then would you give to people who are facing challenges where people are telling them that they can't achieve whatever it is they want to do, whether it's to be a parent or to be a business owner or to get on in their career or to get on in sport?
Well, first of all, I think you need to look at what is frustrating you and what you need to achieve. Okay, so if it's okay, let's say you want to get ahead in your job. Where do you want to go with this job? Is this really the career path that you really, really want? Then break it down into saying, okay, so let's start at the very beginning. What is the first thing I need to do to get to point B? And then, eventually, there's that far point. And just if it's like writing, it's like writing a book, okay? And you've got to work for every word. And I know that sounds tedious, but the only way you work for every word is to put glue on the seat of your pants and sit down and write it. And the only way you're going to finish a marathon is to do the miles every day, not just sometimes. When I ran that first mile to make the field hockey team, I said, Dad, I did it. I ran a mile. And he said, honey, that's really great. Now you've got to do it every day. I said, every day? He said, every day. No matter what the weather is like, no matter what, you got to do that every day. He said, you'll figure it out. Get it in your schedule. And it empowered me. So that's what I'd like people to do. I would really like people to say, it's not overwhelming if you look at it piece by piece. And then it's persistence. It's just kind of dogged persistence that makes it happen. It's not genius.
I heard something recently about the rule of 100, that if you do 100 hours of any discipline in a year, you'll be better than 95% of people that are in that discipline. And it actually only works out to 18 minutes a day to get to that point. And I think that really goes with what you're saying there about persistently just touching whatever it is every day to kind of progress.
Yes. And you know, when things really annoy you and get you down, currently in my life, what is happening is that I have become the holder of all of my parents', not only my significant memorabilia, but my parents' memorabilia, and my grandparents, and my great-grandparents, and my great-great-grandparents. And people stored this stuff away for generations, and it's going to stop with me. And somebody's got to do it. And it's so overwhelming that I'm just saying, okay, it's like a marathon. 1 box a day. 1 box a day. There are 200 boxes here. That means in a year you can get this done. So it's overwhelming. But you know what? Talk to me next year. I'll tell you how I did.
It's incredible though that to think that it was 67. You did this marathon, not realizing that you were going to become a front page news story and then a news story for decades to come. It took another 5 years then for women to formally be allowed to run in that marathon. And then it took another 15 or something years, 10 years or something to get into the Olympic Games, another 12 years or something.
That's warp speed for the IOC. Really. I'm not kidding. If we had followed the protocol of every 4 years getting another event, we wouldn't have had a women's marathon to 2013. So you're thinking that Paula Radcliffe is running a world record by that time, you know? So it just requires, you know, again, persistence to speed things up. And data. You've got to have facts. It can't be emotional. You can't say it's because we deserve it. You've got to create the critical mass of people. You know, you can't say women in Brazil are going to run when they don't have anything. You don't have any proof of that. So you need to make those things happen. That's why my real persistence wasn't just in the mileage I did to run my first marathon. It was the persistence of becoming a good runner. You know, eventually I became a world-class runner. For a couple of years, I was a world-class runner. That was real persistence. And the other real persistence was organizing, you know, 400 races in 27 countries. It was really persistent. And just not being discouraged by people above me who kept discouraging me. You know, I just said, okay, well, you know, we'll do this and we'll invite you. Be nice. I mean, there are plenty of times you run into the ladies' room and close the door and scream.
Yeah. But honestly, it's a great example of how to, you know, other people's opinions don't pay your bills or don't allow you to fulfill your dreams. And you're a great example of that you just thanked them anyway and kept on smiling and kept going.
Yeah. And sometimes you really have to bite your tongue and you really want to snap back. You always just take a deep breath. Be nice. When they're not nice, you be nice, because in the end, the niceness usually wins over. I mean, even as I say, Jack Semple and I became best of friends. I mean, in 1975 in the Boston Marathon, finally ran a great race, okay, a 2:51. And Jacques Semple had to present me with the trophy, and the trophy was broken in the box.
Oh.
And so he was a little unmanned at the ceremony, the presenting ceremony. And as he handed me the trophy, no kidding, he said, "I've been mad at you all these years, and you deserve a broken trophy."
Jock, come on.
Yeah, no, you have to laugh your head off at that. And then just a few hours before he died, I went to visit him. And people say, "Whoa, no, that's a lot of forgiveness." And I said, but also you have to look at it this way. How can you not love somebody who gave you the worst day of your life, but also it became the absolute best day of your life? Because when you take something terrible sometimes, I mean, people who, I mean, this is a really horrible example, but people who often come out of concentration camps, you know, either they're destroyed or they take it and they say, how am I going to turn this upside down and create a force for good from this? And he made that worst day of my life brilliant for millions of people. And I felt sorry for him a little, because I knew the next day, after all the work he had actually done in marathon running and organizing and everything, he saved the Boston Marathon, especially during the Depression years. That the New York Times obituary was going to have him attacking me in the Boston Marathon. And it did.
I'm generally a believer that there's no bad people, just bad behavior. And I guess Jock, that was an example of that. It was bad behavior rather than him being a bad person. And you obviously learned to find the good in him.
Yes, yes. And I was constantly forgiving him. I mean, I think forgiveness is such a huge and powerful tool. That's another thing in terms of persistence, is that when you're persistent and people are persistently difficult for you, is to just swallow hard and forgive them and move on. It's too much baggage to carry, really.
Yeah, by doing that, you can let go of it. You don't have to be defocused. You know, you can focus on your, what you're looking to do.
Yeah, but don't forget I run. So, running is extremely therapeutic. I'm sorry, now I'm talking, but it is. It's a terrific form of meditation and relaxation, and also getting out any kind of aggression or sadness, and you can kind of think it through and come up with a plan. I mean, if you run long enough, you're going to come up with a solution to everything.
So you're definitely someone that's then got patience, haven't you? You go for the long-term gratification.
I'm a long-term gratifier. You're right. Definitely. Yeah.
And I think there's something to be learned from that kind of tortoise and hare kind of story, really, that you don't have to be the most talented or I think too many people look for overnight success now. Do you think that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we're living in an instantaneous generation, and everybody wants everything to come on their cell phone. So, it's not the genius of doing something once. It's the persistence of doing it again and again and again until you get your result. And in the course of doing that, I mean, even if you don't kind of achieve like the hugest goal, you're achieving a lot more than you ever imagined along the way.
And so going back to your parents, it was a mile a day that they pushed you to do, and that obviously gave you an incredible grounding. And that, I think, wasn't there a comment that your father made about not being a spectator? You need to partake, not spectate. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it was, there are millions of things. I think as a parent, you probably throw down pearls of wisdom every day, is handfuls of them, and you hope your kids are going to pick them up. So maybe they just pick up one or two, but that's okay. That's better than not throwing anything down at all. So my situation was, I had just come in from graduating from elementary school, a little country day school. I was 12. I was going to a big high school, 1,500 kids. I was prepubescent, skinny, wore spectacles. And I announced to my father at the dinner table that night Dinner table was always time of discussion. Everybody discussed about what they were doing and what was going on in politics and everything. I said, I'm going to be a high school cheerleader. And my father said, what? And I said, yeah, they're really cute and they get to go out with the captain of the football team and everybody likes them and they're popular. And he said, no, you don't want to cheer for people. You want people to cheer for you. Life is to participate, not spectate. And I went, oh. And he said, hey, the game is on the field, not on the sidelines. Your school has something called a field hockey team. It was brand new, by the way. And he said, I went to a PTA meeting. They're going to have this field hockey team for girls. I don't know what it is, but I know it's about running. And you can run. And he said, in fact, if you ran a mile a day, you'd be the best person on the team. He was really motivated. And I said, I can't run a mile. And he said, sure you can. I said, no, I can't do that. And he said, come on, after dinner, we'll go out and measure the yard. You can do it. And measured the yard. And I took off. He said, no. It's not about going fast. It's about finishing the job. I'll never forget that. It's about finishing the job. And so I did it. I said, Dad, I did it. And that's when he said, okay, every day now. So for 3 months of summer vacation, I ran that mile every day. And I got to the point where I couldn't count the laps anymore because I just got lost in it. And every day I felt empowered. And when I went into that high school, I had a victory under my belt nobody could take away from me. And I'll never forget, here I am, 12, playing with dolls when I got home, okay? And I was sitting in an algebra class next to an 18-year-old who was graduating at the end of that year and getting married and being a grown-up person. And I was intimidated by these people, except I knew they didn't run a mile that day and I did.
Yeah, amazing.
See, it's very simple what a kid will grab and say, I can do that. It makes me feel strong. Yeah. And by the way, I did become a good field hockey player because nobody could catch me.
I bet, yeah. So I've heard you say that your happiest moment was doing the Boston Marathon 50 years later.
Yeah. It was 2017. What a gift to, have a body that, I work it hard, but was in shape enough to run the marathon again. And I'd been running, I ran like 42 marathons and I ran all the time in local races still and all that kind of business. But I decided that would be a real testimony to showing people that age should be no barrier. And I wanted to show people that. So I trained up, really worked hard for 2 years. And then when I ran it, I only ran it 24 minutes slower than I did when I was 20, which was nice. I stopped 13 times. I did interviews along the way. I hugged all these little kids. And a wonderful, wonderful thing that happened is it became, let me see if I have that here. It became the a kickoff for my nonprofit 261 Fearless. I don't know if you see my shirt here. So this old bib number, okay. See, and this is where Jock Semple ripped the corner off, right? Yeah. Then turned into a nonprofit called 261 Fearless, because women around the world still didn't have opportunities to run. And we figured if we could create a program, a global program, where every woman would have a safe space and a coach in her community, could learn to run. Just take her hand and show her, hey, come on, let's just jog with me, walk with me, a group, that this would help change her life and empower her. And it has. We're in 14 countries already. But 2017 was the kickoff for that. And I'll tell you, when I crossed the finish line in that race, it was so enormous for me because it was making global news. And I wanted everybody to know, you're never too old if you take care of yourself. And to work hard and keep your physical strength, to take on a challenge like that. And it was just the happiest day of my life, I would say, because two things also. At the finish line to greet me was a woman named Joanne Flaminio, who was the first woman president of the Boston Athletic Association in 135 years. So she had breakthroughs of her own, and she's standing there with this medal. And the other was my husband, Roger Robinson, who I wasn't expecting to see because he was working in the press room as a journalist. He's a noted historian and as a journalist. But he finished up and he was watching me on the tracker in the press room. So he got out to the finish line also. And my greatest fantasy was always finishing a great race and flying into the arms of your lover and getting this big kiss, right? And so that's exactly what I did. I gave him the biggest, sweatiest, slobbery kiss
Yeah.
you can imagine. It was a very, very happy day because we'd also reached 50-50 in the Boston Marathon. You know, we'd started a nonprofit. Everybody on the course knew the story. Everybody was positive, not negative. It was fabulous being surrounded by these women and realizing we had come so far socially. It was amazing.
It's incredible. That day, you changed the world for so many people for decades and decades and decades, centuries to come. I mean, do you ever wake up in a kind of cold sweat about what would have happened if I'd twisted my ankle and decided to stop, or I'd let the journalists kind of beat me down?
You know what was it? Well, yeah, that was more of it. No, I wake up and I'm stunned at how a girl who had just turned 20 years old could have made that decision. And sometimes I still look at the picture of that face when he's grabbing me and this sheer terror on that face, and how I wanted to step off the course and put my hands over my head and hide. And I didn't. And where did that come from? You know, maybe it was my dad saying, okay, now you've got to do it every day. I don't know.
Did you, is it okay to talk about you in the same light as like the Pankhurst, the suffragettes? I know that's what the journalist said. Is this what you're trying to be? But
yeah, of course, I didn't even know what a suffragette was. I'm sorry to say at that point. I would love to be in the same category as the Pankhurst. And I guess I am, for my generation. That's an honor and a privilege I take very, very, very seriously. As we're going forward now, particularly in this Olympic year, we're stepping into the next level. We're stepping into the next level of what women can achieve physically, which is profound when we're seeing what they're doing. And also, we're going to be seeing now sports becoming as popular and publicizable for women as they are for men. You know, I was there when Billie Jean King started women's professional tennis, and people said, who's going to watch women's tennis? We shouldn't pay you. You know, people said to me, you know, women aren't going to run. And now they're 58% of all participating runners in the United States are women. In New York City this year, it's the 50th anniversary of me winning the race. There are 25,000 men, there are 27,000 women. Do you know the economic power of that? That is millions and millions of dollars. So
it's incredible. Well, look, last couple of things, if I may. Like,
sure.
What advice would you give to people who maybe right now, male or female, feel like they're maybe struggling a bit, that they just can't get ahead, and they're getting in their own way, whatever whether it's in their relationships, in their family, in their work, in their business, in their side gig, whatever? How can they break through?
Look, I think you can't think of everything all at once, because sometimes it all comes down like a house of cards. Okay. You know, I remember that feeling when my parents were dying and I had a global job and I had, you know, I was living in 2 countries. I had a lot on my plate. I just focused on the one thing that was the most important. I said, everything else will wait. I have my parents here only for a few more days. I've got to deal with this. And I was there and attentive the whole time. So do first the thing that you would never forgive yourself for not doing. I guess that's the way to put it.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And what does resilience, if you could sum it up, what does resilience mean to you?
Resilience means to me bounce back. You know, my husband always calls me one of those circus dolls where you punch it and it falls down and it comes back up again. You know, be able to take the blow and come back, or diffuse the blow somehow. Yeah.
And how will people talk about you? How do you hope people talk about you in 100 years' time?
I hope they say, you know, there's somebody who showed us that forgiveness and persistence and determination, persistence and determination go together, are are the most important things to get ahead, and to focus on making positive change out of negatives. I think that's the biggest one, is to take the negative and turn it into a positive. That's what I'd like them to say.
Wow. Well, what a story. Kathrine, you are a true inspiration, and your resilience really has changed the world irreversibly for so many people, especially women. And it's been wonderful to have this time with you. So thank you so much for being a guest on the Resilience Project.
Thank you so much. And here's to resilience in you and everybody listening. Thank you so much. And thank you for what you're doing for everybody.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
That's cool.
Thanks for listening to the Resilience Project. Make sure you're subscribed for notifications with your favourite podcast platform so you find out first when the next one is released. For other news and updates, you can register with me directly at weslinden.com/podcast.